Further developments, analysts say South Africans need to prioritize saving despite the current tough economic climate. In observing Savings Month, a number of research reports have been referenced to point to the impact of the country's low savings rate as it affects economic stability. According to a study by Investec and the Gordon Institute of Business, South Africa has one of the lowest savings rate globally at only 16.3%. National Debt Advisors Dehan Scherman speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time once again, Dehan. Pause before buying is one of the advice given, but at the same time, high school business economics tells us about needs and wants. In the current economic climate, needs have sometimes become wants.
Of course. You see, so savings is very important because we often find that consumers that have less savings leads to a higher reliance on debt. The higher debt exposure then leads to less disposable income, which then leads to less savings. So it creates this vicious cycle where the consumer ends up becoming over-indebted and then requires debt review to alleviate their financial circumstance. It also has a knock-on effect on the economy, where consumers might look at accessing their retirement savings early to service their debt. So this leads to a greater reliance on government to take care of an aging population, which ultimately falls on an overburdened taxpayer to alleviate that.
And that's where many South Africans find themselves currently, and it brings in the importance of trying to spread out big expenses. Talk to us through that.
Yes, so consumers always need to consider budgeting and looking at their income versus their expenses. They need to pause before buying. Like you said, spread out those expenses. We often look at savings as putting money away, but savings isn't only just putting money away. It's about looking at how much less money you can spend to service the same amount of needs and wants. And that needs to be considered. So looking at discounts, for example, looking at sales, looking at where you can save money.
How does online shopping help? A colleague just recently actually related a story that that's a measure of how she calculates what is in a basket. So it's not just about convenience.
Yes, I've found that a lot of people have provided myself with the same advice. So if you're doing online shopping, you're less likely to just grab things without needing or without thinking about it. So online shopping makes the consumer think about what they really need and ensures that they only buy what they really need. So it kind of prevents that whole window shopping phenomenon that we often see, or when we go to the grocery store. We have a list, but we don't always stick to that list, and we end up picking things out that we don't need, and it ends up where we spend more money than what we budgeted for.
That also speaks to discipline, but asking for discounts, it's not just consumers that are in trouble, businesses too. So how feasible is that?
Well, I mean, so businesses often have to look at ways to attract consumers. And so it's a bit of a balancing act between consumers being financially savvy, while at the same time spending enough to ensure that those businesses are functional and that we have a functioning economy.
Lastly, rotating subscriptions, could this not land one in trouble? How do you effectively do it?
Yeah, so rotating subscriptions is a good way to see how you can save, especially where they have like free trials. So I would suggest looking at ways to manage that by seeing like how long you have those free trials and seeing how that affects your subscription.
Thank you so much for your input. Dehan Scherman is with National Debt Advisors talking to us this afternoon about ways to save as we mark Savings Month.